Hello everybody and welcome. Today I'd like to talk about an important topic, and that is good writing habits. In my experience teaching writing for many years, I find that my PhD students in my class usually don't get a paper, not because they don't know how to write. They don't get a paper because they never write. They never take the time to sit down and make the time to work. So today I'm going to speak about writing habits that help us become more productive scholars. I got these writing habits from interviews with a number of different scholars over the years, and from my own classes and some from my own experience as well. And the first writing habit that I want to talk about today is that effective researchers, those who want to produce a lot of papers, have a publication supply chain. Now I want to talk about that idea of a supply chain. What is a supply chain? Well, a supply chain has more than one step. It's a series of steps where we go from the raw material to the semi-finished product to the finished product to the inventory to the customer. Series of steps. Number two, a supply chain has more than one product in the supply chain. We are making a product here, we're making a product here, we're making a product over here. And finally, we begin our supply chain by thinking about our customer. We don't think about the customer after we make our product. We think about it very early on when we are designing our product. Now, how does this compare to paper writing? Well, number one big problem that many students have is they think about writing as a single activity. They wait and wait because they think if they wait long enough, one day a good idea will come down from heaven, and in one magical night they will write their paper. But that will never happen. The smaller you can make the steps in writing your paper, the more likely you are to write your paper. Tiny little baby steps, piece by piece. If we can break it down into little and frequent steps, we are likely to get it done. And I'm going to speak about that more in my seventh habit, which I'll get to later on. So, number one, more than one step, little teeny pieces to get to the end, finished paper. One of the biggest misunderstandings I think students have is they think that a good idea will push them to create a paper very quickly. But that just doesn't happen. Even with a great idea, the only way to make that idea better and to make that idea understandable is to spend time, little pieces of time, writing. Second, more than one paper. If you only write one paper and you submit and then you wait for 6 months and then the paper is rejected, you're probably not going to publish a paper this year. To publish a paper every year, you need more than one paper somewhere in your supply chain. So if you want to publish regularly, you need to be working on 1-2 papers. Maybe 1 or 2 are under submission somewhere. 1 or 2 is waiting to be revised, and then 1 is waiting, it's been rejected. You have to revise before you send it out. If you have that, maybe 7 papers in your publication supply chain, you can reasonably expect to publish every year. But with a single paper, you won't be publishing every year because it takes a long time between getting your idea and getting your finished published paper. Third, think about your customer. Now, when we write papers, our customer is our editor, and we need to think about him before we write our paper. What does he want? Every editor has a very narrow interest in what he's interested in, his journal, and we need to find out what that interest is by reading his letter to us. If you go to the journal homepage, you will see a letter from the editor. Read it. If your editor, your customer, is talking to you, you should be listening. Many times he will tell you precisely what he wants and what he does not want. And because the editor will change fairly frequently, his letter is more updated than the information on the journal website, which may not change over many years. So rather than only reading what's on the journal homepage for topics, read the letter from the editor. It will be educational, you will learn a lot, and it may sometimes conflict directly with what the journal says it wants. But the editor, he's your decision maker. Remember that your editor can accept your paper, reject it, can disagree with reviewers and reject you, or disagree with reviewers and accept you. He really is the decision maker. Find out what it is that he wants. Now, let me talk more about a supply chain for a moment. Remember that a supply chain is a series of steps. Now, the first part of your supply chain is collecting the raw material. That's the information that you need to write your paper. When are you collecting raw material? All the time. You should carry a little notebook with you everywhere you go, and when you have an idea, write it down on a piece of paper, put it in your pocket, and later transfer it to files that you maintain on all of your writing projects. Why is this so important? It's important because good ideas only come one time. I know you think that they'll come again, but they won't. They'll disappear. So catch them now or lose them forever. Good writers are writing all the time. Now, this is especially important when you are doing a lot of research and then you go take a lunch or you go home and your mind is relaxed and suddenly the good idea will come. Aha! Take out your pen, write it down, transfer it to the file later when you're doing your daily writing time. That's a key part of maintaining your supply chain, collecting that raw material, that good idea when it comes to you. And it's also much easier to write your paper when you already have some notes in a file, and then you just have to revise that and make it into your final paper. Master's students, you don't have to wait until you are in the PhD program to work on your paper. You can work on your paper now. You can convert your thesis into a publishable paper, maybe work with your advisor, and then when you apply for a PhD degree, you look very good because you can prove to your future professor that I can write papers, that my ideas are good. Or if you're looking for a job, you can prove to your future boss that your English is good and that your ideas are good as well. So it's good for your CV, good for your career to start early and write and publish early during your master's degree. Now, you need to maintain papers under review all the time. I mentioned this before. If you only have one paper that you're working on and you work on it for 2 years and then submit and wait for 6 months and then rejected, we're in trouble. We need more than one paper under review and in our supply chain if we hope to publish regularly. How can we get so many papers? How can you fill up your supply chain? Well, you may disagree with me here, and that's fine. But my opinion is that you shouldn't put 2 good ideas in one paper. Put them into 2 papers. If you put everything you know in paper number 1, what are you going to say for paper number 2? You're out. Also, another reason why I suggest separating them into 2 papers is that editors and reviewers like short papers more than long papers. In fact, the longer your paper becomes, the more difficult it is to find your paper a home. You need to, and this is particularly because longer papers are more expensive to publish for the journal. It takes more paper, more ink. Reviewers take a longer time to read and review a long paper than a short paper, and editors would prefer to have 2 authors than just one for the space in their journal. So long papers, harder to publish. Shorter papers, easier to publish. So put fewer ideas, maybe just 1 key idea in each paper, and then you can get more papers, fill up your supply chain, and get more points that you need. Now, to do this, you need to consider different subtopics. Now, by different subtopics, here's what my concern is. Sometimes I see PhD students, and they spend 5 years researching a topic. They don't write, they don't publish, and now suddenly they're afraid because 5 years they've been doing research. So they write 3 papers about the same topic, submit to 3 journals, and are rejected by all 3 journals for the same reason. Now, we could have avoided this if we had started to write earlier and been rejected earlier, and then we could learn earlier what editors and reviewers and journals want. Because we learn through rejection. Rejection is a good thing. Rejection can teach us what our market, our customer is really interested in. Waiting benefits no one. Start early so you can get rejected early, and then you can publish earlier as well. Finally, in a supply chain, we can reuse parts of other products to make new products, and the same is true with papers. You can reuse template sentences from your previous papers and copy, paste, and revise them to use them again in your new papers. Not only your papers, but other people's papers. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying go copy everybody's ideas in their other papers, but what I am saying is that often the sentences, the paragraphs, the patterns that are there can be reused across papers with changes to make it original and make it new. You don't have to start from the beginning every time you start a new paper, especially if you've written a related paper before. So you can recycle and reuse parts with modifications of papers that you've written, or if you change it enough, parts of other people's papers. So you're not starting from zero every time. Every time you write a paper, there are more sentences there that you might be able to reuse and revise in upcoming sentences in the future. Well, I've enjoyed spending this time with you today. For more information, I would encourage you to visit my blog. It's www.editing.tw/blog. I post a lot of articles in Chinese on this blog about how Taiwanese authors can publish more in international journals. You won't be disappointed if you visit. And I'd also like to suggest that if you need any help with editing or translating your paper, I have a company and we revise only research and only for Chinese-speaking scholars. And if you need our assistance, you can visit our blog, our website rather, at editing.tw. We do a heavy revision, lots of changes to your paper. We also make comments about how you can improve your paper. And if you have any questions, you can email back and forth about those, and we would be very happy to help you out with that. And in addition, because we're a local Taiwan company, we can give you a fapiao for all of your project needs as well. Please visit us, and we'd love to help you.